I'm Christina, 25 years old, and I mostly keep to myself. Even though I have a job or study, my family might think I don't because I don't talk about it much, especially my brother. How did I end up like this? Well, it all goes back to my time in middle school when I started feeling like I couldn't trust people. It's not just one thing that caused it, but mostly because I felt ignored. I guess people didn't find me interesting because I was always into machines. I've always enjoyed messing around with computers, and I was pretty good at it, which helped out at home. But then my school grades dropped because I spent more time with computers than with friends, and my parents got worried. When I finished elementary school, my parents started telling me off, saying, "Stop spending so much time with those machines." During middle school, as my parents kept scolding me, I started feeling like I shouldn't pursue my interests. So whenever I had free time from school, I'd hide in my room to avoid my parents, cutting off contact with the outside world. This made more people think I was strange or risky, and I started feeling isolated even at school. The only person who supported me was my brother Keith. He always knew how to cheer me up and keep me going. With his help, I finished school. But I didn't go to high school. Instead, I did computer jobs from home. When I was about 16, I got a part-time job, and with the money I earned, I bought old computers to take apart and rebuild from scratch, just the way I liked. My hobby became a business opportunity, and by the time I hit 20, I was making and selling computers. Soon, I started my own business, offering affordable computers, and became quite well known. By the time I turned 25, I'd made a decent amount of money. I even started contributing $2,500 to my parents' household each month and still had money left over. Even though I tried explaining my job to my parents, they didn't get it. After a few arguments, they decided that as long as I could support myself, they didn't mind what I did. This meant they stopped interfering and I could live as I pleased at home. But my brother still didn't think much of me. My brother used to be my ally, the one who understood me best when I was in school. He was really kind. But maybe he got tired of his sister, who was still at her parents' house tinkering with machines even after turning 20. Over time, he started treating me harshly whenever he saw me. Since I didn't keep quiet about it, we ended up having more conflicts, and now we're not on good terms. Things got even worse after my brother got married. His wife, who we'd known since high school, never really liked me. After hearing about me from my brother, she didn't want to be my sister-in-law and seemed to influence my brother against me. Because of this ongoing situation, I became known as the troublemaker at home. Even though I stayed in my room most of the time, I felt my heart breaking from all the hostility directed at me, which was different from my parents' concerned words. Suddenly, my parents' home, once a cozy sanctuary despite the criticisms, turned into a hostile environment. I no longer felt comfortable there, and it seemed like my parents were being swayed against me while my allies disappeared. Even though I had my own income and contributed to the household expenses, my brother and sister-in-law, who didn't understand my work, saw me as a burden. They started talking about kicking me out and taking over the house. Feeling disconnected from my brother and his plans, I figured leaving wouldn't make much of a difference. Once I found a new place, I wouldn't have to contribute to household expenses anymore, which meant I could save that money instead. It was kind of a silver lining. As I was thinking about moving out, my brother brought up the topic of inheritance out of the blue. He seemed to think that our parents' financial comfort, despite my lack of a traditional job, was due to their wealth. So when the idea of me leaving came up, he suggested, "Since we'll be taking care of mom and dad, we should inherit their assets. You should give up your share of the inheritance." But the truth was, the reason our parents could enjoy their lives without working was because I was covering their living expenses. I didn't think they could manage without that money, but my brother saw me as nothing but a burden in my room. Despite feeling like leaving was the best option, I decided to ask one more time out of kindness. "Are you really okay with me leaving?" I asked. My brother just laughed and said, "We'd be happy if you left already." It became clear once again how little he understood. I felt sorry for him and his wife, which made me even more determined to leave. A few days later, I was still in my room, and my brother and sister-in-law were relentless in their efforts to get me out. They kept knocking on my door, convinced mom to stop cooking for me, and even told me to do my own laundry. But these were all things I'd have to do if I lived alone anyway. I wasn't going to just sit back and let them take my place away from me without a fight. Sure, I wasn't happy about it, but I wasn't about to accept it either. I was being unfairly pushed out, and I wasn't going to take it lying down. After all, I'm skilled with machines, something my brother seemed to forget. He didn't realize the power I had with a computer at my disposal. I wasn't the type to quietly obey orders and leave. My brother's marriage, with me as the reclusive sister, was the only chance for our parents to have a grandchild. They were so focused on that, they didn't see how wrong it was for me to leave. So I decided to set up a little surprise for them, a trap that would spring into action as soon as I left the house. After finding a new place to live and completing all the necessary procedures, I was ready to leave my family home. Just before I departed, I left a farewell message for my parents and brother. I've been supporting the family, and you've forgotten all the good I've done. I hope you realize who the real burden on our family wealth is. My parents seemed surprised for a moment, but they probably trusted that my brother would figure things out somehow. They all brushed off my words as bitterness. I knew they didn't take me seriously. But for now, I believed it was best to leave things this way. So I left the house. I took a significant amount of equipment from my family home and bought additional items, along with necessary furniture and appliances for my new place. I set up my new place just the way I wanted it, decorating it with my favorite style and creating a cozy atmosphere. It turned out to be a perfect environment for me to work in, and surprisingly, living alone wasn't as intimidating as I thought it would be. In fact, I wished I had made the move sooner. The people in the neighborhood were friendly and life was comfortable. Since leaving my family home and taking care of everything on my own, I've been enjoying myself, trying out new experiences. While I was reveling in my newfound independence, I wondered how things were going back at my family home, especially since they lost my financial support. Then, out of the blue, my mother called. "Hey, Christina, did you do something to our machines?" she asked. "What do you mean?" I replied. "There's something wrong with the computers and electronics," she said. "I have no idea about that," I said, puzzled. "I used to help out for free because we're family, but since you treated me poorly and kicked me out, even though you're my parents, you'll have to pay the regular price," I explained. "What? That's pretty greedy. We're your parents. Can't you give us a discount?" They responded. "Well, I prefer giving discounts to my friends. Unlike you, they treat me well," I countered. "Fine, you're so cheap," they grumbled. Internally, I sighed with relief that another trap hadn't been triggered and dealt with the situation calmly. But my mother didn't seem to appreciate my response. She abruptly hung up, behaving like a sulking child, and even sent a spiteful email implying that mean people lose friends. It made me question who was acting like the mature one. Frankly, it seemed self-centered, if not downright selfish. As for what I did to the family computer, I simply restored all the adjustments I had previously made for free back to their original settings. To someone unfamiliar, it might seem like the computer malfunctioned on its own. When I suggested they contact the company for repairs as an individual, they got upset. But I expected as much, so I let it go. 6 months after leaving home and settling into my new life, my father called me. "I hate to ask, but can you lend me some money?" he said. "What do you mean? Lend you money?" I responded. "Your brother and his wife have been spending recklessly. They think we're rich, and they keep complaining, asking for money to buy this or go there," he explained. "I have no idea about any of this. Why do you always come to me with everything? I've heard of daughters who live alone sending money home, but parents asking their children for money? Shouldn't it be the other way around, out of generosity?" I questioned. "It's not that simple," he replied. "Well, even $500 would help," he added. "I'm not giving you anything. I won't lend you money either. I have no intention of financially supporting you anymore," I firmly stated. "Of course, I'll work on your machines if you pay for my services," I replied calmly. "You've really become stingy," they retorted. "I guess Mom was right about you." They went on complaining about my unemployed years, but I didn't let it bother me. I just ended the call. My father didn't send any emails, but he started calling me multiple times a day, which I found annoying. What troublesome parents I have, I thought to myself. A few days later, my brother, sounding desperate, called me. When I asked why they kept contacting me, he asked, "Do you know why our family was wealthy?" It seemed like he suspected their financial situation had worsened since I moved out, but it was too late. My current home was my sanctuary. My work and life were all centered around this house, and I had no intention of leaving it again. Could it be that our family's wealth came from the $2,500 I was contributing each month? I pondered. I didn't have to give that much, but I felt grateful for my upbringing, so I willingly contributed more. But now, why would I continue supporting a home that kicked me out? It didn't make sense, right? So that's when mom and dad's finances took a hit. My brother realized. I'm sorry, but even if you asked me to come back, I have no intention of doing so, I replied firmly. I understand now that what happened was wrong. I'm sorry, but it's too late for apologies. I have no plans to have any involvement with you in the future. Please don't call me anymore. Hey, wait, my brother protested, but I ended the call. When I left home, I made a vow never to be drawn back into their drama. Forgiving them wasn't something I could do easily. I decided to cancel my cell phone contract to avoid the constant calls. 5 years have passed since then, and I've moved on. I got married and started a new chapter in my life. My partner is in the same line of work as me, so he understands my lifestyle and helps out with household chores. Although I thought about reaching out to my parents since they're technically family, I felt it was too late. I hadn't made any attempts to reconnect. However, my husband expressed an interest in meeting my parents and learning about their current situation. To gain insight, I hired a detective to investigate. What we discovered was shocking. My parents, desperate to maintain their lifestyle and keep my brother and his wife tied to the family home, had accrued a mountain of debt from various lenders. With no hope of repayment, the debt continued to grow with accumulating interest, leaving them in a dire situation. The debt from my parents alone exceeded $100,000, and their house had been used as collateral. Now, where our family home once stood, there's only an empty lot. Although I felt a twinge of sadness due to my sentimental attachment to our family home, I couldn't help but think that my parents were facing the consequences of their actions. I decided to look into my brother's current situation. It appeared that my brother had suggested a divorce due to his wife's extravagant spending habits, but she vehemently opposed the idea. They were now embroiled in a drawn-out divorce lawsuit, which was draining both their time and finances. His wife had hired a lawyer and was resisting the divorce, refusing to let go of my brother, leaving them at an impasse. Despite rumors, my brother and his wife hadn't yet had children. To confirm, I sent the detective to the hospital where they were being treated. It turned out my brother was indeed infertile, nearly incapable of producing sperm, making natural conception highly unlikely. My parents, who had pinned their hopes on having grandchildren from my brother and his wife, were disappointed and ended their cohabitation. The family home had to be sold to settle the debt, marking the sad state of my family. This distressing reality became apparent after a cursory investigation. It was evident that engaging with them in this condition wouldn't be beneficial for me or my husband. Now, I have a loving husband, 4 children, and a dog. We've purchased a spacious home and are living the life my family once dreamed of. If they were aware of our situation, they might try to exploit it, which I couldn't bear. As soon as I learned about this, I went to the local office and arranged for my personal information to be accessible only through formal disclosure requests. I made a conscious effort to keep my distance from them and asked my husband not to engage with them regarding our marriage. Although he seemed disappointed at first, after explaining the situation, he understood and hasn't brought it up since. I hope that once things settle down at my family home and a time for reconciliation arrives, I can rebuild a relationship with my parents and brother. My ex-husband, who thought I was infertile, left me 15 years ago. When he ran into me and saw my son, he trembled. That chance encounter was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey where old secrets resurface and hidden truths come to light, challenging everything he believed about the past, present, and future. Hey there, folks. I'm Linda, and welcome to Linda's Stories channel. I hope you're all ready for a good tale. So, picture this. It's a sunny afternoon, and there's Catherine sitting by herself at a restaurant table by the window. She's gazing outside, enjoying the lovely day, waiting for the waiter to bring her lunch. Little did she know, a surprising encounter was just around the corner. As Catherine headed to the bathroom, she accidentally bumped into a boy walking down the hallway. She said sorry right away, but when she glanced at the man with the boy, she was shocked to see someone from her past. It was Michelle, Catherine's ex-husband, whom she hadn't seen in 15 years since they divorced. Feeling a bit surprised by the unexpected meeting, Catherine felt a mix of surprise and discomfort as he came closer. However, she stayed composed and greeted him politely. Michelle and Catherine had always dreamed of having children. From the start of their marriage, they tried hard to make that dream come true, but it just didn't happen. Years passed, and they still couldn't conceive. Catherine started to worry that something might be wrong and suggested they see a doctor together to figure it out and maybe try some treatments. But Michel, being stubborn, refused to go. He came from a big family and thought the problem must be with Catherine, considering his own family's fertility history compared to hers, as she was an only child. Using their family backgrounds as evidence, he started blaming her for being infertile, which only made things worse between them. Eventually, their frustrations and misunderstandings grew so much that they ended up getting divorced. Despite the scars from their past, Catherine decided to greet Michel politely, recognizing that time had passed since they last met. However, her warm attitude was met with coldness and disdain from Michel. "Are you alone?" "Still single, I see," he said arrogantly, his eyes reflecting superiority and indifference towards Catherine. With a gesture implying his supposed superiority, he introduced the young man beside him. "This is my son, Austin," he announced proudly, as if it were a personal accomplishment. "He's a real genius, just like my new wife, Sophie," he added, nodding towards a woman at another table, a hint of pride in his voice as he talked about his new family. Catherine was astonished by Michel's arrogance. She had hoped that after so many years, things might have changed between them, but his behavior showed otherwise. It was clear that he was still as proud as ever. However, little did Michel know, something was about to happen that would shake up his entire family's destiny and change the course of his own history forever. As they talked, a tall and caring young boy approached Catherine. Seeing the concern on her face, the boy, with a protective instinct, asked, "Is everything all right, Mom?" Catherine's face lit up at the sight of her son, and she replied warmly, "Yes, everything's fine, my dear. I'm happy you're here. I ran into someone from the past while waiting for you." She gave her son a loving kiss on the cheek, appreciating his care. "I want you to meet my son, Michel," Catherine continued, smiling as she noticed the surprise on Michel's face. "This is Nathan." Michel couldn't conceal his surprise upon discovering that Catherine had a son. His eyes widened, reflecting a whirlwind of thoughts as he realized the boy was already a teenager, about 15 years old. Before Michel could say anything, the waiter arrived with Catherine's lunch, breaking the moment. Taking advantage of the interruption, Catherine excused herself and joined her son, leaving Michel lost in his thoughts. Returning to his table with his son and wife, Michel appeared distant, his mind elsewhere. While Sophie and Austin enjoyed their meals, Michel seemed preoccupied, his thoughts consumed by a single idea. Could Nathan be his son? Was it possible that Catherine was pregnant when they separated and never told him? But why would she keep it a secret? These questions consumed Michel, overshadowing his ability to enjoy the present moment. Before he could find answers, Sophie's voice broke through his thoughts, snapping him back to reality. As days passed, Michel couldn't shake the issue from his mind. He dreaded facing the truth that haunted him. How would Sophie react to learning he had a child from his past marriage? And what about Austin? How would he feel discovering he had an older brother? The idea of confronting Catherine, fearing she might demand financial support, only added to his anxiety. Despite the swirling uncertainties and doubts in his mind, Michel couldn't ignore the overwhelming curiosity pushing him to uncover the truth. How could this be possible? Michel questioned himself relentlessly. He was convinced that Catherine was unable to have children, especially after years of failed attempts to conceive together. Michel's experience with Sophie had been vastly different. A few years after his divorce, he met Sophie, and she soon became pregnant with Austin. Upon hearing the news, they swiftly decided to marry, embarking on a new life together. These contrasting circumstances only deepened Michel's doubts and confusion about the possibility of Nathan being his son. Michel found himself caught in a profound internal struggle. On one side, he yearned for the truth, but on the other, he dreaded the potential upheaval in his life if Nathan turned out to be his son. His pride urged him to maintain the facade of a perfect family with Sophie and Austin, convincing himself that Nathan and Catherine's reappearance would only bring chaos and disruption. Yet, Catherine's persistent silence on the matter intrigued him further. Why would she keep Nathan a secret from him? This mystery intensified his curiosity and deepened his doubts. Meanwhile, Sophie began to notice her husband's distant demeanor. Michel always seemed lost in thought, and it concerned her deeply. Determined to uncover the cause of his distress, she confronted him, ready to face whatever truth lay behind his troubled behavior. Feeling trapped and unable to keep his worries to himself any longer, Michel finally opened up to his wife about his suspicions. Sophie was taken aback by Michel's revelations, her eyes widening in disbelief and apprehension. "Do you think Nathan could be your son?" she asked, her voice betraying surprise and uncertainty. Taking a deep breath, Michel mustered the courage to admit his suspicions. "Yes, I believe it's a possibility," he confessed, his voice tinged with doubt. Concern furrowed Sophie's brow. "But Michel, this could turn our lives upside down. Are you sure it's wise to pursue this truth?" she asked, her apprehension evident in her tone. Michel nodded resolutely. "I have to know, Sophie. If Catherine won't tell me the truth, then I'll arrange for a DNA test," he declared firmly, his decision firm and unwavering. "No, Michel, please don't do this," Sophie pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "We shouldn't get mixed up in their lives," she reasoned, attempting to sway her husband. "Let's just leave the past where it belongs and focus on our future." Sophie tried everything to dissuade Michel from pursuing the truth, convinced it was best to leave things in the past. She thought she had convinced him, but Michel remained resolute in his determination to uncover the truth. Against Sophie's wishes, Michel decided to contact Catherine and arrange a meeting, determined to seek answers. Catherine was taken aback when Michel reached out to her after their unexpected encounter at the restaurant. She never expected to hear from him again, recalling his arrogance from their past. Initially hesitant, she declined his invitation. However, Michel's persistence eventually persuaded her to agree, albeit reluctantly. "Catherine, there's something important we need to discuss," Michel began, sounding unsure. "It's been weighing on my mind since our meeting at the restaurant. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I need to know the truth," he asserted firmly. "What's this about? What do you mean?" Catherine asked, puzzled. "You know exactly what I'm referring to," Michel snapped back. "I'm talking about Nathan. If he's my son, I deserve to know," he declared emphatically. "Oh, so that's why you were so surprised at the restaurant," Catherine chuckled, putting the pieces together. "What's so funny?" Michel demanded. "I deserve to know the truth." "No, Nathan isn't yours," Catherine affirmed, frustrated by Michel's insistence. Unsatisfied, Michel pressed on. "Then whose son is he?" he demanded. "You, a single mom with a 15-year-old son. He has to be mine. I just don't understand how that's possible. You were infertile." "You always jump to conclusions," Catherine shot back, annoyed by Michel's accusations. "Nathan isn't yours. I've already told you he's Gregory's son, my husband's." Michel was taken aback, and Catherine clarified. "Nathan isn't 15. He's tall like my husband, but he's actually just about to turn 14. There's no way he could be your son," Catherine asserted. "After our divorce, I went to see a doctor to figure out why I couldn't conceive and maybe explore treatment options," she explained. "What the doctor told me there was nothing wrong. I was perfectly healthy and capable of getting pregnant. And that's exactly what happened. Once Gregory and I got married, I became pregnant with Nathan, and later on, we had 2 more sons, Evan, who is 10, and Theo, who is 7. After the confrontation with Catherine and the revelation that Nathan wasn't his son, Michel felt deeply intrigued and disturbed. Catherine's words made him question everything he believed about his fertility and his relationship with Sophie. Angry and confused, Michel tried to make sense of it all. He couldn't understand how, coming from a large family, he only had 1 child with Sophie, while Catherine, whom he thought was infertile, had 3 children with her husband. Ultimately, Michel decided to take Catherine's advice and see a doctor. Sophie, thinking she had convinced him to move on from the past, had no idea what Michel was up to, and he couldn't anticipate what he would discover. The medical tests revealed a truth that rocked Michel to his core. He was sterile. This revelation triggered a flood of questions about his marriage to Sophie. How could he have fathered a child with her if he was sterile? This newfound knowledge cast doubt on the very foundation of their relationship. Michel spent a considerable amount of time lost in thought, contemplating the significance of this revelation and its implications for his life and his marriage to Sophie. He was faced with the daunting task of redefining his identity and role as a husband and father. Amidst the turmoil of this painful discovery, when he confronted Sophie, Michel was devastated to learn the truth about Austin. She admitted that during the early stages of their relationship, she had a brief affair with another man, resulting in her pregnancy with Austin. The revelation left Michelle utterly shattered, feeling as though his entire life had crumbled around him. His pride and confidence in his fertility had blinded him to the truth for so long. Now he was confronted with a new reality that shook the very core of his beliefs about his marriage and his role as a father. Michelle had to come to terms with this newfound truth. He found himself faced with the daunting task of rebuilding his relationship with Sophie on a foundation of shattered trust. Moreover, he grappled with the emotional challenge of reconciling his feelings towards Austin, knowing he wasn't his biological son but still loving him as his own child. This revelation marked a profound turning point for Michelle, but he understood the necessity of forging ahead and reconstructing his life upon this newfound truth. This narrative underscores the vital role truth plays in fostering healthy and enduring relationships. Honesty, both with oneself and with others, serves as a cornerstone for nurturing mutual trust and respect. Moreover, the story serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of confronting our own biases and egos, which can obscure our perception of reality and hinder our ability to truly see those around us. Have you ever experienced a moment where the revelation of truth completely altered your perspective on something or someone in your life? If you found this story engaging, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Feel free to leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to indicate your level of appreciation for the narrative. Also, check out the video currently displayed on your screen. Until next time.
I spent $200,000. Kenny, who didn't even come to my mom's funeral, had suddenly flown overseas. $200,000. What did you do with all that money? Remember our nice piano at home? I sold it, dude. Being from a rich family has its perks. It was a good piano. I never thought it would sell for $200,000. Kenny thought the piano at home was his, but he was wrong. My condolences. I get all the inheritance from the family estate. But that piano was actually bought by our grandpa for my brother, so it's still his. My brother loves that piano and teaches piano now. He left it at our house because it's too big for his place. If my brother finds out we sold it without asking him, he'll be really mad. Just giving him money won't fix it. When I told Kenny this, he hung up right away. Hi, I'm Rachel Schneider, a 45-year-old office worker. My family has a long history tracing back to colonial times and is quite prominent in our community. Thanks to my late father's successful business, we now possess assets worth $9 million. Originally, my older brother was set to inherit the family estate, but he chose love over inheritance, opting to forego his rights to marry his girlfriend, who needed an heir for her family's wealth. This decision left me with the task of finding a spouse to carry on our family name. Despite my desire for independence and reluctance to rely on family wealth, I focused solely on my career, and before I knew it, I was in my mid-40s and still single. Realizing the urgency of continuing our family line, I decided to take action and attended a singles mixer. It was there that I met Kenny, my current husband. Surprisingly, he's 10 years younger than me, but at the event, he showed no interest in the younger women and approached me directly. I'm not sure if you're okay with someone my age, I asked him multiple times. But Kenny gazed into my eyes and replied, I'm a bit shy and not very assertive. I've always been attracted to older, more grounded women. Kenny's demeanor matched his words, gentle and reserved. I sensed he could bring a sense of calm to my family, which tends to be assertive. As our relationship blossomed, there was something important I needed to share with him. My mother had been ill and bedridden for the past year, and my sister-in-law, Catherine, and I were taking turns caring for her. Considering our age and the prospect of marriage, I struggled with how to reveal this to Kenny. Eventually, on our third date, I mustered the courage to tell him. To my relief, he not only accepted but also proposed, expressing his willingness to assist with caregiving. His kindness deeply moved me. At least, that's how I initially felt. Kenny works as a daycare teacher, but just 4 months into our marriage, he expressed a sudden desire to quit his job. When I inquired about the reason, he wore a remorseful expression and said, Sorry, Rachel. The parents at the daycare are too demanding and complain a lot. I can't handle it anymore. It was evident that Kenny was struggling, appearing so timid. Normally, I would have encouraged him to persevere, but with him assisting in my mother's care and my pregnancy progressing, I remained silent. However, I soon began to regret my leniency. One day, as I exited the shower and approached the bedroom, I overheard Kenny whispering on the phone. What I heard left me shocked and unsettled. I managed to tie the knot without her suspecting a thing. I'm jobless. She bought my story about quitting work hook, line, and sinker. Little does she know, I ditched that job 2 years back. His conversation seemed directed at a friend on the other end of the line. A faint male voice responded, "You're quite the operator. Rachel's family is loaded, so I thought I hit the jackpot when I met her at that singles event. But let's face it, given her age, I was probably her only option. I felt duped. Was the sweet Kenny I fell for all an act? I wanted to confront him right then and there, but the thought of the baby stopped me cold. With Kenny's true colors revealed, I began to doubt our future. Today, Catherine will be looking after my mom until 5 p.m. Then it's my turn. I debated whether to confide in someone about Kenny. That's when my brother's wife, Catherine, approached me. "Rachel, you seem troubled. If there's anything on your mind, feel free to share," Catherine said, her kindness evident, having cared for her own mother for years and now mine. She's really good with Mom too. So I confided in her about Kenny, and she listened attentively. "It's good you opened up. Keeping it to yourself could harm your unborn child," she reassured me. "Yeah, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Talking won't solve everything, but it does lighten the load. Still, this situation is quite something." Catherine looked genuinely concerned, almost as if it were her own problem. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and Kenny walked in without waiting for an answer. Both of us were surprised, but Kenny acted as if nothing was wrong and smiled. "Rachel, I'll be helping with your mom's care from now on. You're not in the safe period yet, so I don't want you to strain yourself," Kenny said, playing the gentleman in front of me. "Really? Okay, let me show you how to care for her." "No, I'll learn from Catherine. You just rest at home." "Well, my brother's coming home early today, so we won't need her help." Upon hearing that, Catherine looked at me, shaking her head, as if to say, it's okay. She might confront Kenny and get the full story once I'm gone. With that in mind, I decided to leave it to her and head home. But I couldn't shake my worry, so I pretended to leave but hid nearby. Catherine tried to start a conversation with Kenny, but he beat her to it. "I've been meaning to ask, why are you taking care of your mother-in-law in this house?" he asked, using the same tone as on the phone. "Well, my husband's busy, and Rachel has her job. But more importantly, why you ask?" Then Kenny interrupted. "What?" and began hurling insults at Catherine. "You live in such a wealthy home. You'd have enough money to put your mother-in-law in a care facility, wouldn't you? Or is it something else? Did your husband give up his claim to this family's wealth? So you're trying to curry favor by taking care of her? That must be it. You'd be pretty upset if you married into money and didn't get a piece of the inheritance, wouldn't you?" It was cruel. I was furious too, ready to leave the room. But just as I was about to, Catherine, noticing me, signaled with her eyes to stay put. Reluctantly, I remained silent and watched the scene unfold. "You've hit a nerve, haven't you? If that's the case, leave right now. This family's wealth belongs to my wife and me, so I'll handle my mother-in-law's care alone from now on." With Kenny's stern declaration, Catherine felt it was pointless to argue further and left the scene. Sensing the tension, I discreetly stepped outside, concerned about Catherine's feelings and wondering how to apologize to her. Kenny took over Mom's care entirely, refusing any assistance from me. He only provided basic instructions on caregiving. But his neglectful approach led to tragic consequences, and our mother passed away. The funeral took place at the church where generations of our family had been laid to rest. However, Kenny was nowhere to be found from the moment Mom passed away. Despite my attempts to locate him, I was too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements to pursue the matter. Relatives and neighbors were puzzled by his absence. Catherine, grief-stricken at the altar, apologized for trusting Kenny with Mom's care. Approaching her, I tried to offer some comfort. Catherine, please don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. Rachel, it's not your fault either. But where is that man? I wanted to confront him today, and he disappears just as Mom passes away. Exactly. And didn't Kenny often leave the house while he was supposed to be caring for Mom? Where was he going? Yes, neighbors mentioned he was frequently out, almost as if he wasn't caregiving at all, just loafing around. They also mentioned a big truck that came by once. What was that about? I wanted to ask, but with the funeral, I didn't bring it up. Days passed, and Kenny still hadn't returned. Then, I received a call from him. Hey, Rachel, I'm in a fancy hotel in Europe, like the ones you see on TV travel shows, Kenny said nonchalantly. Kenny, you missed Mom's funeral, and now this. I spent $200,000. $200,000? Where did you get that kind of money? Remember the grand piano at our family home? I sold it. Who knew it was worth $200,000? Kenny confessed to selling the family's cherished grand piano and squandering the money on luxury travel in Europe. I never imagined Kenny would pull something like this while supposed to be caring for Mom. Our family home had tight security, but with family, it's different. That truck must have been there to move the piano. Why would you do something so selfish? The whole family was worried about you missing the funeral. Well, once you have a kid, you won't have much free time. Since you have a job, I guess I'll have to be the stay-at-home dad. Kenny's words left me stunned. Despite my anger, his willingness to take on childcare was a silver lining. But it seemed he was aiming to live off me. Additionally, Kenny seemed to think the piano belonged to me. Confronting Kenny, who had unknowingly sold a piano and spent the money, I started with my condolences. Huh. What do you mean? Kenny seemed bewildered, so I explained about the piano. That piano belonged to my grandfather, bought for my brother. So it still belongs to him. Oh, really? I'll just apologize to your brother then, Kenny replied, lacking any remorse for selling someone else's property. Kenny only met my brother at our wedding, so it's understandable he didn't know. My brother is a piano teacher and has loved the piano since childhood. He begged our grandfather for that specific piano. Although there's no room for it in his house now, it's still his. He even dreams of starting his own school with it. The piano means everything to him. I can only imagine what punishment he'll have for you when he hears it was sold without permission. By the way, my brother despises dishonesty. As I explained, Kenny remained silent. Understand? Mere compensation won't suffice when he finds out you sold his beloved piano. He's not one to compromise. I wonder what punishment awaits you. With that warning, the call abruptly ended. He's probably regretting it now. I called my brother and told him everything. Needless to say, he was furious. The next day, Kenny rushed home, finding everyone gathered in the living room. What's going on? Why is everyone here? Kenny asked nervously. I heard everything from Rachel, my brother said sternly. What possessed you to sell someone else's property, especially something so valuable, without consulting the family? Kenny tried to justify himself, visibly shaken. I was just trying to pitch in with the household chores out of boredom. When I saw the old, large grand piano, I figured no one was using it anymore. So you decided to sell it. Yeah, it seemed like a waste to just leave it there. My brother, wearing a stern expression, pressed further. Really? That piano was special, imported by our grandfather from a top European manufacturer. Where's the money from the sale? As anticipated, my brother was playing his part well. Everyone probably knew Kenny had spent all the money on an overseas trip, but my brother was aiming for a confession in front of everyone. Kenny seemed lost in thought, struggling to come up with an excuse. The sales money. Yeah, it hasn't come in yet. Kenny stammered, clearly flustered, but my brother wasn't buying it. You're lying? How deceitful can you get? And what about those souvenirs from Europe in that huge suitcase? Kenny recoiled as if struck by lightning, closing his eyes in shame. I'm sorry, I spent all the money. Kenny's admission left the relatives murmuring in shock. Everyone knew the value of that grand piano. They couldn't fathom how Kenny could blow $200,000 on just one trip overseas. My brother, looking down at Kenny, lifted his chin with his hand, locking eyes with him as he said, "As Rachel probably told you, that piano was mine. Now that it's gone, you'll repay every penny. If you can't, I'll sue you for theft. Are we clear?" My brother's intensity was palpable, almost resembling a mob boss. While this would typically be a family matter, my brother was likely using intimidation tactics, knowing Kenny was clueless about the law. Predictably, Kenny lost his voice and began sweating profusely. Then, with a terrified glance at me, he pleaded, "Rachel, please help me." His voice was desperate, but I had no intention of intervening. This mess was entirely of his own making. When I rejected his plea, Kenny resorted to a ludicrous argument, saying, "Don't be so cold. I looked after your mom while you were pregnant. I saw the trip as a reward for myself after caregiving. Let's just say we both agreed to sell the piano this way. Since we're siblings, it can't be considered theft, right?" I was so dumbfounded that my mouth hung open, unable to form a response. It was Catherine who stepped in to defend me. "That's enough. Didn't you tell Rachel not to assist with caregiving? You even accused me of being after the inheritance and tried to push me away. Kenny, did you say such awful things to my wife too?" "Yes, I didn't want to worry you, so I kept quiet. But this man must have been scheming to sell the piano without letting Rachel and me near the family home." Catherine's words resonated with me, remembering how Kenny prevented me from getting close to the family home when he said he'd handle our parents alone. I reached the same conclusion. My brother's anger flared up once more. "Listen closely. My wife cared for Mom because she wanted her to stay out of a facility. She agreed out of kindness, not for money. First, apologize to my wife right now." With my brother grabbing Kenny by the collar, tears welled up in Kenny's eyes as he knelt before Catherine. "I'm so sorry, Catherine." Kenny's apology for his disrespectful behavior towards Catherine didn't soften the cold gazes of the relatives. Then, one of them shouted at Kenny, "You need to repay the money from the piano sale promptly. We can't tolerate a criminal in the Schneider family. It'll stain our name." Misinterpreting the situation once more, Kenny made another peculiar remark. "Exactly. We can't have a criminal in the family, right, bro? So let's keep calm. We'll work together as a couple to repay the debt gradually." Even my uncle was left speechless by Kenny's illogical response. Feeling that further discussion would be futile, I excused myself to retrieve something from my room. Ever since the phone incident, I had a divorce lawyer's business card ready. "Kenny, call this number. I want our marriage to end. Let's handle things through legal channels." Kenny's face drained of color when he saw the business card I handed him. "Why? We're expecting a baby. Why are you doing this?" At that moment, I disclosed what Kenny had said to everyone on the phone. "You heard that. It was just a joke. Do you think that's a valid excuse? I've known all along that you were after my inheritance." Everyone present glared at Kenny, realizing there was no way to justify his actions. Kenny responded with defiance, unwilling to admit his wrongdoing. "Rachel, please, I need your help," Kenny pleaded in desperation. He explained that the buyer of the grand piano he sold wanted to return it and get a refund. When Kenny had sold the piano, he claimed it was in perfect condition. However, upon inspection, the buyer discovered a large engraving on the back indicating my brother's ownership. It seemed Kenny hadn't checked thoroughly. Instead of selling it through a reputable dealer, he likely chose a shady one enticed by offers like completely free, and now he faced the consequences. Kenny had to refund $200,000 to the buyer, a significant sum considering his debt to my brother. Despite Kenny's attempt to file for bankruptcy, my brother and I took legal action to prevent it. Now, burdened with more debt, Kenny worked tirelessly in manual labor. Eventually, the heirloom grand piano was safely returned. Relieved, my brother secured it with a strong lock and installed a security camera in the room, exercising caution. "No one will touch that piano until I begin my piano lessons," my brother declared, unchanged from his childhood self, which brought a smile to my face. With his desire to start a piano school at our family home, I decided to discuss sharing our mother's inheritance. Feeling guilty for inheriting everything alone after Catherine's devoted care for our mother, I proposed the idea to my brother, who agreed. It ensured a positive relationship with his family in the future. And so, I welcomed a long-awaited baby girl. While some relatives hoped for an heir, I believe daughters tend to cherish their mothers longer in today's age. Besides, my mother, an only daughter herself, accepted a son-in-law, so if necessary, my daughter could do the same. Embracing single motherhood, I found unwavering support from Catherine, who had finished raising her own children. Grateful for her assistance during my mother's care, I felt deeply indebted to her. My brother eagerly volunteered to be a father figure for my daughter, his excitement palpable. Additionally, my brother and Catherine's 2 adult daughters, both kindergarten teachers, shared his passion for the piano. Bonding with my daughter, surrounded by such warmth and support, I felt immensely fortunate, and with gratitude, I resolved to face life's challenges head-on with my daughter by my side.
My uncle, flushed with alcohol, echoed words that cut deeper than any knife. His sentiments found harmony in the nods and murmurs of agreement from the other men gathered around. Emboldened by the chorus of support, my husband unleashed a torrent of criticism, each word hitting its mark with precision. His satisfaction gleamed in his eyes as he reveled in the validation of his peers. I forced a calm facade, swallowing my humiliation and rage with each breath. Then, just as tension reached its peak, my mother-in-law rose from her seat, her gaze a force to be reckoned with. "Is that truly all you have to offer?" Her words pierced the heavy air, silencing the room in an instant. "My name is Emma, and I'm a 40-year-old woman working in a medical office. I met Tom, my husband, a man 4 years my senior, through our shared love of tennis. We've been married for 13 years. Though we both longed for children, fate had other plans, leaving a bittersweet ache between us. My in-laws, who live separately, keep a vigilant eye on us, especially my mother-in-law. Our bond is strong. We often enjoy lunches out and shopping trips together. Losing my mother at a young age made my mother-in-law's presence all the more significant. She embraced me with a mother's love, cherishing me as if I were her own flesh and blood. While our marriage initially thrived, over time, my husband's demeanor shifted. After about a decade, he became increasingly domineering. His once gentle kindness toward me evaporated. Moreover, his workload burgeoned, leading to frequent overtime and business trips. 3 years ago, he was reassigned to a different department, exacerbating our disconnect. He now spends half the week away from home. Upon his sporadic returns, his demands are curt and dismissive. "Dinner," he barks, or "Is the bath ready yet?" treating me as if I were merely a servant. Fed up, I once dared to voice my grievances. "You're not a child anymore. You should at least handle your own clothes," I protested. His response was chilling. "What nonsense is this? Your role is to obey me as your husband. Don't complain, you're my wife." For what felt like an eternity, my husband's accusatory finger jabbed the air, his voice rising in a crescendo of abuse. This ritual of verbal assault would replay whenever his mood soared, a relentless cycle I couldn't escape. His incessant nagging and troublesome behavior left me no choice but to acquiesce. Sitting at the dinner table one evening, I faced yet another onslaught of criticism. "More vegetables again? Am I supposed to eat like a rabbit now? Get some meat on the table. You know your cholesterol's high." Reluctantly, I resolved to reduce the meat intake. But before I could speak, he rose abruptly, flinging the meal I had prepared onto the floor. "No one knows my body better than me. I'll eat out," I declared, but my words fell on deaf ears as he stormed out, wallet and phone in hand, slamming the door behind him. Every day, I scoured the internet for low-salt, low-meat recipes, desperate to accommodate his high cholesterol flagged in his company's medical checkup. Yet despite my efforts, it all seemed in vain. As I stooped to clean up the mess on the floor, a wave of desolation washed over me. 3 hours later, my husband returned, his tune merry, his senses dulled by alcohol. In resignation, I retrieved his coat from where he carelessly flung it, only to catch a whiff of grilled meat mingled with a perfume unfamiliar to me. Doubts that had lingered in the shadows of my mind surfaced with renewed intensity. I had suspected infidelity in the past, but lacking concrete evidence, I chose to suppress my concerns. Yet the distinct scent of that perfume fueled my suspicions like never before. From then on, whenever my husband's temper flared, he would vanish without explanation, returning home only to rush into the shower. Each time, the telltale fragrance lingered in the air, a haunting reminder that something was amiss. Soon his careless whistling in the shower would be silenced unless I confronted the truth lurking within his coat. Bolstered by my growing conviction of his infidelity, I resolved to gather evidence to confront him. 3 weeks later, on New Year's Day, we made our customary visit to my in-laws' home, where relatives congregated for the annual celebration. The table was adorned with a feast prepared lovingly by my mother-in-law, a colorful array tempting the senses. Amid greetings exchanged and well wishes shared, my husband's discontent simmered just beneath the surface. "Don't hold back, Emma. Dig in," my mother-in-law encouraged, to which I gratefully replied. Yet my husband's gaze bored into me with disapproval as I savored the meal, appreciating the effort put forth by his mother. "Where are the chopsticks?" His voice pierced the air, breaking the harmony of the gathering. Hastily, I fetched them from the kitchen, presented them to him, only to be met with another demand. "And the cups?" he queried, his irritation palpable. "Shouldn't she anticipate these things without being asked? You need to be more attentive to your surroundings," he chided, his words like barbs aimed at my every move. Despite the presence of our extended family, my husband's verbal assaults persisted. "I'm not a mind reader. You have to communicate with me," he insisted, his tone cutting through the festive atmosphere. Suppressing my frustration, I handed him a glass, which he accepted with a charming smile as he sipped the sake poured by our relatives. "Would you care for a drink, Emma?" my uncle kindly offered, but my husband interjected, "She's on chauffeur duty today," dismissing the gesture. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and the other women toiled away in the kitchen, preparing lunch and attending to the needs of the men. Donning an apron I brought from home, I joined the flurry of activity, working tirelessly alongside them. While my father-in-law and the other men reveled in their merriment, consuming one bottle of sake after another, the sounds of their boisterous laughter filled the air. Expressing her sympathy for our busyness, my mother-in-law interrupted our tasks to offer us a respite, serving steaming cups of tea. As we sat together, engaging in light conversation, my husband's voice echoed from the living room, a reminder of the tensions simmering just beyond our temporary sanctuary. "Let's spice things up with some honesty, shall we? A little stress relief for the new year," my husband proposed, to the delight of the gathered guests. "The loser of a round of rock, paper, scissors gets to spill the beans," he declared, his words slurred from alcohol. "That sounds like a riot," my mother-in-law chimed in, her interest piqued. Little did she know, I had my own agenda for this New Year's Eve gathering. As the game commenced with enthusiastic shouts, I seized the opportunity presented by my husband's unexpected suggestion. Retrieving something from my bag, I discreetly tucked it into my apron pocket. Amidst the raucous game, the losers vented their frustrations about work and bosses, met with sympathetic nods and murmurs of agreement. "It's all too true," the chorus of listeners echoed. Finally, it was my husband's turn to air his grievances, having lost the game of rock, paper, scissors. Anticipation and anxiety knotted in my stomach as I awaited his revelations. "My complaint is that my wife lacks attractiveness, and her cooking leaves much to be desired." My husband's words struck me like a bolt of lightning, leaving me reeling in shock. My father-in-law, clearly uncomfortable, hastily cleared his throat. "But when you two tied the knot, you couldn't stop praising her beauty and culinary skills," he interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. "That was ages ago, Dad. Nowadays she serves up bland dishes filled with nothing but leaves like rabbit food." My uncle's demeanor darkened at the revelation. "It's unacceptable. As his wife, she should step up her game." His sentiments found resonance among the men present. Unbeknownst to them, I had dedicated countless hours pondering my husband's health and meticulously planning our meals. Yet their words flowed freely, oblivious to my efforts. Overwhelmed by a cocktail of embarrassment and fury, I longed to escape. As the conversation shifted to complaints about wives, my husband led the charge. "I toil away every day, yet my allowance remains unchanged. Stop your griping and obey me, my father-in-law chuckled in agreement, while the wise, downtrodden, remained silent. Then it was my husband's turn once more. Everyone else is blessed with children, he declared, but my wife is defective, incapable of bearing offspring. His callous words pierced me to the core, shattering the illusion of our marriage. The ache of unfulfilled dreams and the sting of betrayal weighed heavy on my heart, drowning me in a sea of sorrow and frustration. I inhaled deeply, willing the tears threatening to spill over to retreat. It'll all work out, Emma. My mother-in-law's gentle grip on my hand offered a modicum of comfort. With a heavy sigh, she rose from her seat, her countenance dark with a resolve I hadn't witnessed before. Is that all you've got to say? Her unexpected outburst jolted the men, accustomed to her usual gentle demeanor. The once vibrant atmosphere fell into an uneasy silence. Come on now, let's not ruin the fun, my father-in-law attempted to diffuse the tension, addressing my mother-in-law. Fun? Are you the only ones enjoying yourselves here? You should have put a stop to this. My mother-in-law's voice trembled with righteous indignation. Shame on you, speaking to her like that, labeling her defective. How dare you? She continued, her gaze piercing. Yes, she's right. My father-in-law's troubled expression betrayed his discomfort as he averted his eyes. We all have grievances to air, he conceded. Exactly. The women, previously silent, erupted in support, their applause ringing through the room. Let's not hold back. Speak your mind, and we'll all feel better. The words of my mother-in-law ignited a cascade of truth from the women, each expressing their grievances with newfound courage. If you want more allowance, then earn more. Why not take initiative instead of expecting us to cater to your every need? They demanded, their voices ringing with determination. As the wives confronted their husbands with precise criticisms, the men faltered, offering apologies in succession. Only my husband remained unmoved, his indifference palpable. Why should I apologize for speaking the truth? He retorted, locking eyes with Noah in a tense exchange. I refuse to apologize, and I'll say it again. She's unattractive, a terrible cook, and incapable of bearing children. My husband's accusatory finger pointed squarely at me, each word a dagger to my heart. The dam of sorrow and frustration I had meticulously held in check finally burst, giving way to a tidal wave of rage. You have no right to speak to me like that. I confronted my husband with a measured tone, my hand discreetly gripping the cell phone hidden in my apron pocket. It's unfair that you're the only one allowed to vent. I have grievances too, you know, and you wouldn't object, would you? You've aired your complaints about me plenty of times. I'd welcome appreciation, but not baseless accusations. With a deliberate motion, I withdrew an envelope from my pocket, scattering its contents across the table where our relatives sat. The photographs revealed damning evidence. My husband entering a hotel room with another woman, then exiting her apartment, hand in hand. Bolstered by my suspicions, I had discreetly installed a GPS tracker in his car, providing irrefutable proof of his infidelity. Originally intended for a private discussion with my mother-in-law, the situation demanded immediate action. Guests filled the room as the truth unfolded, disrupting the once jovial atmosphere. Frantically, my husband attempted to gather the incriminating photos. Isn't it normal for husbands to stray? He appealed to the men for validation, but his plea fell on deaf ears. No one in the room offered agreement, leaving him isolated in his deceit. As my uncle, once a supporter of my husband, denounced infidelity with a resounding "No, that's unforgivable," the other men nodded in solemn agreement. Yet my husband remained defiant. You lot couldn't even dare to stray from your wives, he taunted, his laughter hollow and bitter. My uncle, spurred into action by my husband's audacity, rose from his seat. Who truly bears the shame here? He challenged, echoed by murmurs of concurrence from the men, their gazes piercing through my husband's facade. Despite his attempts to maintain a facade of strength and righteousness, my husband's demeanor reeked of desperation, leaving me repulsed by his arrogance. With resolve, I confronted him once more, armed with further evidence. A week ago, I received a call from Maruka-san, your newfound love, I revealed, each word laden with the weight of betrayal. She claimed you've been seeing each other for 3 years now. My husband's feeble attempts at denial only served to betray his guilt. She even mentioned your subordinate, and the fact that she's 7 months pregnant, I continued, unmasking the deceit woven into his web of lies. She pleaded for a divorce, stating that you refused to acknowledge the child, fearing my reaction. His protests dissolved into stammered excuses as I extracted my phone from my apron pocket, placing it on speaker for all to hear. Maruka-san, did you hear what I just said? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Through stifled sobs, her response came quietly but unmistakably. Yes, she confirmed, her words carrying the weight of truth, shattering the illusion my husband had meticulously constructed. In fact, the day before New Year's, I had reached out to the girl, informing her of my intentions to call her the next day. Seeking insight into my husband's true intentions, she had agreed, and thus, I made the call just before confronting him. Overhearing the conversation, she was overcome with tears and fury. He told me to wait until our divorce is finalized, she lamented, her voice trembling with betrayal. I never uttered such words. Surely, as my wife, you understand, don't you? Why would I say such a thing? You're the one who betrayed me, my husband countered, his gaze falling to the ground in shame. I'll never forgive you, she declared before abruptly ending the call, her trust in my husband shattered. Presenting the divorce papers I had prepared, I demanded his signature, only to be met with a storm of fury. Absolutely not. I can't simply sign this on a whim. How dare you, sis? Besides, after all this, you'll owe me 2 million yen in alimony. No, I refuse to divorce you. I simply don't have that kind of money, he protested, his demeanor devolving into childish petulance as he stamped his feet in protest. Witnessing my husband's unprecedented display of immaturity, I nearly chuckled, but remained resolute in my demand for divorce and alimony. Tom, you're not a child. It's shameful. My mother-in-law's frustration with his pitiful behavior was evident as she scolded him with an exasperated expression. You can't just refuse divorce and alimony. Face reality with dignity, I pressed on, my tone unwavering. It's not that simple, Mom. Dad, you understand how I feel, right? My husband appealed, seeking validation. Absolutely not. I can't condone your actions. My father-in-law's response was firm, leaving my husband with little recourse. Reluctantly, he signed the divorce papers and agreed to the alimony, his tears held back only by sheer willpower. Believing this gathering to be the opportune moment to expose my husband's infidelity, I pushed him further. Oh, by the way, I've terminated our lease at the end of the month. One home should suffice for you, shouldn't it? My words were met with applause from the women and deep sighs from the men, and my husband left my in-laws' house, seemingly fleeing from the attention of everyone present. The next day, they filed for divorce at the city office and relocated to a rental apartment I had already arranged. Additionally, I sought 1.5 million yen in alimony from my ex-husband's unfaithful partner. It would have been a harsh blow for the girl, having quit her job upon learning of her pregnancy. But forgiveness was out of the question. After losing his apartment, my ex-husband sought refuge with the girl. Promptly, he acknowledged paternity upon divorce. However, she eventually severed ties, demanding 1.5 million yen per month in child support. Moreover, my ex-husband resigned from his job following the scandal's exposure, making it untenable for him to continue with the company. Left abandoned by his parents and unable to secure a new job, my ex-husband resorted to sleeping in internet cafes and juggling part-time gigs to meet his alimony obligations. Susan, my former mother-in-law, confided in me about his deteriorating health, citing elevated cholesterol levels and the toll his self-indulgent lifestyle had taken since our divorce. Interestingly, Susan and I forged an unexpected friendship post-divorce, growing closer than ever before. Now I find solace in the tranquility of my life, relishing the peace that comes with solitude.
My husband told me he lost his job, he said sadly. But hey, that might not be so bad. We can still turn things around. Just ignore that sneaky boss. We'll figure things out ourselves. I'm Sammy, by the way. The other day, I said yes, yes when the microwave beeped, and my daughter looked at me funny, saying, "Mom's talking to the microwave." It felt weird being caught off guard like that. But with gadgets like Alexa and Siri, talking to machines isn't unusual anymore. It was embarrassing because I didn't even realize I was doing it. But hey, compared to some of the really embarrassing moments I've had in the past, talking to the microwave isn't such a big deal. This happened about 15 years ago when I was working at a small but prestigious company. The company was known for its expertise in specialized tasks, like creating programs to keep computer systems safe. It had a good reputation with big companies, and its performance was solid. Back then, the internet wasn't as common as it is now, so there was a lot of potential for growth, especially in areas like security. People expected the company to keep doing well. During this time, I met Simon, who is now my husband. He was a colleague, and we eventually got married. But even before we tied the knot, I had to deal with unwanted attention from the company's president. I've always been seen as attractive, even from a young age, and I'd often got noticed by photographers for magazines when I was out and about. Unfortunately, that also meant I attracted the wrong kind of attention from some men, including the president. Because of that, I've never really liked my own looks. Even a simple good morning from me would be exaggerated by the president, who would say things like, "You're such a good girl," always greeting me with a smile. He'd brag about it to others in the company. The president was 48 years old at the time, bald, with what little hair he had left slicked down on his forehead. But he seemed content with his appearance and didn't seem bothered about fixing it. He wasn't very nice, and he treated employees he didn't like with arrogance, while being friendly to those who were useful to the company or those he found attractive. He had a bossy way about him, which created divisions among the staff. Whether it was good or bad, his behavior made me feel uncomfortable. But since he was my boss, I had to find a way to get along with him. Dealing with a man who wrongly believed I was dependent on him because I reported to him for work was tricky. I tried to avoid getting too close to him to avoid any misunderstandings. However, when I announced my marriage to my husband, the president began persistently asking me out for meals. Even though we kept our relationship at work secret, people who knew about us knew. But the fact that the president increased his invitations at this time showed he hadn't realized I was married until then. It was just things like feeling his eyes on me or hearing from others that he liked me. I initially tried to handle it gracefully, but it became a problem when his invitations got more intense. He suggested going to fancy restaurants, drinking expensive wine he bought, and even going to bars with private rooms. He kept asking when I would go out with him alone, making things awkward and uncomfortable for me. Even after I kept saying no to his invitations, the president didn't stop. He thought I was playing hard to get and teasing him on purpose, calling me names like Little Devil. His invitations were so obvious, he just wanted to get me drunk and take advantage of me in private. It was clear it had nothing to do with work. If he suggested going to a busy park near a police station and asked me to drink water while licking salt, which I hated, I might have considered it as a work obligation, but ultimately, I wouldn't have gone. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him straight out to leave me alone because it was bothering me. I had avoided saying this before because I didn't want him to realize I knew about his interest in me, which would complicate things even more. But that day, I was too stressed, and my true feelings slipped out. As expected, the president just laughed and tried to touch me. He said I knew all along and was teasing him on purpose. His touch made my skin crawl, and without thinking, I pushed him away and ran off. Originally, my husband was concerned about the president's behavior and suggested I quit my job. But I insisted on staying because I wanted to support my husband, who was the top technician in the company. He's working on a new system that could greatly improve our company's performance, and I wanted to be there to see it through. Switching companies after quitting wouldn't have made sense for me, so despite the uncomfortable situation with the president, I chose to stay. However, it was time to put an end to it. The next day, I handed in my resignation letter, addressing it to the president. I had already discussed everything with my husband the night before, and he strongly encouraged me to resign. So with determination, I confronted the president, but he didn't accept it. Instead, he tried to convince me to stay by offering higher pay and a better position. He even made weird suggestions like promoting me to be the president's wife, which made me uneasy. I told him I was married and tired of his advances, but he seemed to twist my words, implying that I secretly loved him. It was frustrating. I never saw him that way. I thought maybe he felt threatened by my husband and was trying to keep me close, but that conversation just made me more determined to leave. The president accepted my resignation, saying I shouldn't have to work as just an ordinary employee when I'm going to be the future president's wife. He took my letter and left the office. It was clear he didn't understand anything. Blaming my husband made no sense. But wait, isn't this unexpectedly lucky for both me and my husband? Just married, and now I'm out of a job. When my husband asked what was wrong, I smiled and said, "Well then, congratulations." I suggested to my husband that since he was developing a system to find suitable customers for the company, and without him, the data wouldn't be updated, maybe it was a good opportunity for us to start our own business. He was surprised at first, but then laughed and agreed, saying I was clever. We could work together again. After getting fired, my husband wasted no time. Within 30 days, just like the president said, we used our savings to start our own business. During this time, my husband reached out to the talented people from our old company, basically recruiting them to join us. The bald president, who didn't even know how to use a computer, often didn't understand the struggles we faced and would give us impossible tasks. So when my husband asked them to join our company where they'd be understood and valued, almost everyone agreed, except for the higher-ups the president favored. If I had stayed at the old company, I might have been stuck there too. Following my husband's lead, he developed a new and improved version of the system he'd been working on before. With his connections, he not only secured jobs, but also created 2 new security systems, selling them to other companies. In an industry with few competitors, companies naturally wanted the best products, so our workload quickly grew. Within 4 years, our company became the best in the business. Everyone at our company was thrilled with our success. Then, out of nowhere, the president showed up at our office one day. Reluctantly, my husband led him to his workspace, which also served as the president's office. Worried, I went along too. My husband asked the president what he wanted, and the president immediately bowed and apologized with tears in his eyes. He said he'd been watching us for the past few years and realized that I really didn't like him. He genuinely regretted his actions. The president explained that the previous company was in financial trouble, short-staffed, and making employees work long hours without paying them properly for overtime. At this point, I didn't really care about getting an apology. My husband is making more money now than he did at the old company, and he's increased the salaries of our employees. We're happy with where we are now, so the president's apology didn't matter to me. It felt like a waste of time. When my husband asked if the president had anything else to say, the president got off the sofa, sat on the floor, and begged. He pleaded for my husband to come back to the old company, saying that with him there, things would improve. But my husband calmly refused. He said that ever since he got fired, he's no longer an employee there and has a responsibility to protect the people at our own company, so he couldn't go back. The president kept pleading, even offering to step down and have his company merge with ours. But my husband said no. He explained that what the president did to me in the past was wrong and hurtful to female employees' morale. Nowadays, overworking is criticized, and actions like the president's are considered unacceptable. Back then, it might have been seen differently, but now it's clear it was wrong. He mentioned how victims were often silenced or blamed, and he couldn't forgive the president for what he did. The situation with overtime was different. Until then, it was common for companies to ignore labor laws and make employees work long hours. But as laws changed and people started seeing long hours as harmful, the president's actions could have serious consequences if reported. At first, he begged not to resign, but he eventually realized he couldn't stay as the head of the company. The president stepped down, and my husband took over, merging his company with ours. All the employees came with us, and we sorted out the unpaid overtime. Since our company was doing well, it was a relief. The president's company didn't pay much for overtime anyway, so the amount owed wasn't huge. We came out on top. When you suggested starting a business after I lost my job, I never imagined we'd grow so much that we'd surpass the president's company. I'd always believed in your abilities. Really? Or are you just trying to boost my ego? I teased my husband. No way. You caught me, he replied with a smile. As we talked about our journey as a couple, I felt genuinely relieved that everything had worked out so well. Later, it came out that someone leaked the conversations for the president's office, including his embarrassing actions towards me. This, along with the issue of unpaid overtime, made it to the local newspapers. It didn't make it to TV news because it's a small company, but more people read local papers than watch TV or read famous magazines. The president became a laughingstock in the community, and kids started playing a game called Playing President, where they pretended to flirt with a reluctant girl. It was embarrassing for him, and if he saw it, he'd probably feel even worse. He was divorced and had a teenage daughter. When she heard about the game, she seemed upset and ran home. Having a creepy father must be tough for a sensitive girl like her. It's like he's facing consequences for his own actions. Now, the president lost his company and his daughter, and he can't get a good job because he doesn't know how to use a computer. He's working as an office worker in a local factory, but he struggles with basic tasks. He's even serving tea to the female president there. It's quite a fall from his previous position. He used to order female tea servers around, but now he's the one serving tea. He probably never imagined he'd end up like this. The employees who joined our company from the president's old one find his downfall pretty amusing. They're not feeling sorry for him at all. Meanwhile, my husband and I have been blessed with 2 children. Our daughter is quite the chatterbox and loves teasing me when I get distracted during phone calls or talk to the microwave. She's cheeky but adorable. Our son, who's a year younger, seems to have a knack for computers like his dad. Even at his young age, he's already dabbling in creating small programs. So we think he has a bright future ahead of him. It would be great if he eventually took over the company, but right now, he's more interested in being a YouTuber, working for Uber Eats, or delivering pizzas. Wait, son, aren't there any other options? I often ask him. Despite the chaos of parenting, we cherish our happy family moments every day. So, how did you like our story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates. See you in the next video. I've been saving up a lot lately. My name's Cassie, and I can't help but smirk at my phone with a sneaky laugh. I'm 29 now, married for 2 years, and working hard as a housewife. Some of my coworkers think my smirk is weird, but I can't stop because I'm so close to saving enough money to build my dream home. The balance in my bank account is almost there. My husband, Max, and I don't have kids yet, but we've always planned to have some once we have our own home. I wanted to stay single a bit longer, but at 27, I fell in love with Max, who's a bit older than me. We work at the same company, but in different departments, which can be awkward, but I've stuck with it because finding a new job would mean less money. Now, after a lot of hard work, I'm almost ready to buy our dream home. It's been quite a journey. Life with my husband is smooth sailing, and our savings are growing steadily. We're content with our ordinary jobs and our plan to buy a simple home. Finding joy in this regular life is what makes me happiest. But there's one big hiccup, my relationship with my in-laws. It's the toughest part of being married. When I come home from work to our small rented apartment, seeing my in-laws' shoes at the door instantly drains me. They seem to be here again today. I let out a heavy sigh. I'm home. Oh, you're back. The one who responds isn't my husband, Max, but my mother-in-law, comfortably seated on our cramped sofa. Good evening. Do you always come home this late? Our in-laws live just 3 train stops away, which is too close for comfort. That's why my mother-in-law often drops by without considering the inconvenience. You're home late again. What about Max's dinner? This happens too often. No sympathy for my long work hours, just complaints from my mother-in-law. I'm sorry, work was hectic. I'll cook something now. Max has been home for a while. Cassie, aren't you a bit inefficient? Even though Max and I work at the same company, our jobs are very different. Max rarely has overtime in his department, but he earns less. My department, however, is crucial to the company, often requiring me to work late. That's why I earn the highest salary in the company. I never bring this up myself, and I wish Max would. But maybe his pride gets in the way. He never speaks up. Right now, he's just quietly drinking his tea. Even though we both work, I feel like Max could pitch in a bit with the housework, but he steadfastly avoids it. Whether it's shopping, laundry, cleaning, preparing the bath, or cooking. When he gets home from work, he's either glued to the TV or absorbed in his phone. Oblivious to all this, my mother-in-law, as usual, came over to criticize me today. It's okay. I already had dinner with Max. Oh, you've eaten? We had some amazing sushi. I decided to treat Max to something nice for a change. I see. I was taken aback when I heard the name of the sushi restaurant. Isn't that an upscale place? Though surprised, since my mother-in-law footed the bill, I decided to let it slide and started heading to the kitchen to make my own dinner. But my mother-in-law stopped me. Cassie, I hate to ask, but could you do me a favor? I'm a bit short on cash this month. Could you lend me some? Just as I suspected, my mother-in-law often asks for money like this. I wanted to say, hold on a second. That doesn't seem right. You went to a fancy sushi restaurant, didn't you? And last month, you said you were struggling and begged for money. I reluctantly gave you $300, even though we're also tight on cash. And the month before that, and the one before that. Aren't you being a bit careless? But I held back and managed a strained smile. I'm sorry, we're all having a tough time this month. Can't you do anything for your struggling parents? You're the cold one, not me. Who's really cold here? Your son, who neglects his duties at home, leaves his wife alone, and goes out to eat sushi. Seems pretty cold to me. Finally, my husband Max chimed in. Cassie's mom is in a tough spot. Can't you lend her a hand? Oh, so we're really struggling this month, huh? Well, Mom, I'll help you out. Max sighed and pulled $500 from his wallet, handing it to his mother. Max is such a kind and wonderful son, unlike Cassie. I was stunned as my mother-in-law shot me a glare and headed for the door. I thought she was leaving, but then she turned back and glared at me again. Max, if you ever want to divorce your money-hungry wife, you're always welcome to come back home. I'll keep that in mind. With a slam, my mother-in-law left. What was that all about? I turned to Max, who was already lounging on the sofa with his phone. I confronted him. Why did you give her $500? If we have that much extra cash, why not put it towards our household expenses? I had my reasons for asking. While Max pays the rent for this apartment, that's the extent of his contributions. I cover all the bills like utilities, phone, groceries, and other expenses because Max refuses to chip in. What do you mean? I pay the rent, don't I? You expect more than just that. You're so greedy. That's Max's usual way of avoiding financial responsibility. I'm taking care of everything else, including the phone bill you're holding. It's understandable you earn more, but I only make a bit more than your salary. We're barely making ends meet with our expenses and savings. Oh, you have enough to save? Then you should be fine. Suddenly, he reached out his hand when I mentioned savings. What's this for? I gave my mom $500, and now I'm broke. Can you lend me some cash? What? Seriously. This is unbelievable. Despite keeping almost all of his salary except for rent, Max always claims he's short on money every month. He used to justify it by saying, a man needs to socialize and entertain, and I reluctantly went along. But not today. Why should I foot the bill for you and your mom's sushi? Why am I responsible for that? It's a way to honor parents. What about me? Neither Max nor my mother-in-law ever show appreciation. It feels like I'm just a paycheck to them. And what was that about considering divorce? Exactly what it sounds like. If you keep being so tight-fisted, I might have to consider it. With that, Max locked himself in the bedroom. He even went as far as locking the bedroom door. In our tiny apartment, there aren't many places to go. With the bedroom inaccessible, my only option was to sleep on the sofa. These days, amid all the stress, The only solace I find is in checking my bank account balance. After enduring yet another round of sarcasm and financial demands from my mother-in-law, I'd open my phone before starting my overtime shift at work. Logging into my savings account, which I've had since I was single, I thought everything was on track for our dream home. That is, until I saw something that made me freeze. "What's going on?" I exclaimed, abruptly apologizing to my boss before rushing home. "Max, are you here?" "Oh, what's going on? You're home early today." Max looked surprised. Before him lay an assortment of what looked like expensive sushi, and he wasn't alone. "Welcome home, Cassie. We're just visiting." Both in-laws were present, not just my mother-in-law, but my father-in-law too. I couldn't help but wonder why they were here. "What's happening?" "We're having sushi." "Want some, Cassie?" "Sushi? Where did this come from?" "Oh, we had some extra cash," they replied. Pressing for more details, both Max and my in-laws seemed taken aback. I grabbed Max's collar, as if to keep him from escaping, and he reluctantly handed me something. It was the bank book for the account I had just checked online. Flipping it open, I was left speechless when I saw the transaction history. "What's going on? How did you withdraw this?" I demanded, my anger rising. "Well, I just guessed the PIN, and it worked. Lucky me, right?" Max replied casually, showing no remorse for taking out a large sum of money without my consent. I was furious and on the verge of exploding at Max for his nonchalant attitude. "How dare you take my money without asking?" The funds I had diligently saved since my single days had been withdrawn without my knowledge. "Come on, we're married, aren't we? What's mine is yours. Don't be so uptight. This is the savings I've worked hard for since before we got married. Give it back." "Relax, Cassie. What's yours is mine, naturally," Max said dismissively. Living off Max's support while secretly saving such a large amount of money. "You're so greedy," Max accused, his tone accusatory. "Yeah, exactly. You should appreciate me more. Who do you think you're depending on? It's unbelievable. I feel like I'm alone in this. Don't joke around. Taking my money like this is no different from theft. Give it back. Who's joking?" Max snapped, clearly startled by the accusation. Annoyed, he continued, "Don't forget, I'm the one paying the rent here, and I have plenty of social obligations to fulfill. Plus, I help my parents." "Right. Max is such a wonderful son. You leave the rent to me and secretly save all this money. It's easy for you. You only cover the rent. You hardly ever entertain, yet you ask me for money while supporting your parents. Stop it. You married into this. It's only right for you to respect me and my parents. What's more, be grateful I haven't divorced you for being so useless," Max yelled, grabbing my hand and pushing me out the door. "Hey, no sushi for you. Go cool off outside." I never expected to be kicked out. After standing there in shock for a while, I ended up spending the night in a business hotel. The next day, when I returned home, only Max was there. I was relieved the in-laws were gone. But then Max handed me a piece of paper. It was a mutual agreement statement, stating that if I didn't obey him, we would divorce. "What's this?" "Listen, if you keep complaining, we're getting divorced. If you don't want that, just obey me silently. I'll take charge of the savings from now on," Max declared, flaunting the bank book. Then he got ready to leave. "Where are you going?" "Out for a drink." "What? Do you have a problem? Want a divorce?" He taunted with a smirk and left. Such a foolish man. Did he really think threatening divorce would make me comply? My love for Max had completely vanished. Besides, did he seriously think there was still money left in the account he emptied? I had already withdrawn it all and moved it to another account. I felt uneasy keeping a large sum in one place, so I had multiple accounts. The bank book Max took was just one of them. I signed the paper without hesitation. Max's attempt at a threat didn't faze me. It was exactly what I desired. Quickly, I packed my belongings and left the house. I spent another night at a business hotel, and the following day, I took a day off work to file for divorce as soon as the city office opened. Then, I headed straight to a real estate agency. The previous night, while browsing on my phone at the hotel, I stumbled upon a property that caught my attention. A newly built detached family home near the station, perfect for commuting. It was almost love at first sight. The exterior and interior matched what I had envisioned. After viewing it, I made the decision to purchase the house on the spot. From then on, everything happened in a whirlwind. Staying in a business hotel until the move became too costly, so I explained my situation and stayed with a friend while getting ready for the new house. I had to start from scratch with furniture and other arrangements. Amid the whirlwind of activity, I completely forgot about my ex-husband and former in-laws. "Hey, Cassie!" Max's voice startled me one day when he showed up at my workplace. "Oh, right, we work at the same company." As Max loudly called my name, drawing everyone's attention, he approached me without hesitation. "Why haven't you been returning my calls?" "Oh, I didn't think they were important," I replied, remembering Max's persistent calls. I was preoccupied and didn't want the hassle, so I ignored them. "You withdrew money from the account on your own, didn't you? Stop playing around. And why haven't you come back home? Do you really want to get divorced?" "It's fine," I replied nonchalantly. "We're already divorced, and that money in the account is mine, so I can do as I please with it," I stated firmly. Max still seemed to view the word divorce as a threat. My casual response left him looking bewildered. "What a silly expression. It's almost comical." "What divorce? You mean you graciously offered it to me, and I graciously accepted," I remarked. "What? I don't accept this," Max protested. "Whether you accept it or not, the divorce is final." "Oh, and I've already informed the company and completed all the necessary procedures. You might have some paperwork to handle, so make sure to report it to your boss, okay?" With that, I redirected my attention to my computer. "I'm busy." "Where are you living now? You left your belongings at the house," Max inquired. "I took what I needed. I'm comfortably settled in with new things I bought. Don't worry about me. And as for your whereabouts, that's none of your concern. This is a matter of privacy, so please refrain from prying any further," I replied firmly. With that, Max fell silent. Eventually, feeling the weight of the stares from my colleagues and boss, Max left the department without saying another word. "Cassie's been through a lot," my colleagues sympathized. The comfort of my new home was unparalleled. The scent of a freshly built house was unforgettable. It was spacious and cozy. However, having just moved in, there were still many things I needed. Today, I was anticipating the delivery of some appliances I had ordered online. Then the intercom rang. "Ah, it must be here," I thought as I went to open the door. I immediately regretted it. I cursed myself for not checking the intercom. Standing before me was Mother. Technically, my former mother-in-law, but the words slipped out in my surprise. There she stood, accompanied by my former father-in-law. And further back, Max was lingering. "Long time no see, Cassie." "I'm coming in," Mother announced. "Wait, hold on," I protested, taken aback. My former mother-in-law barged into the house and began inspecting it as if assessing its value. "Oh, this property is quite nice. And this furniture is lovely. Move it to my room, will you? Oh, there's a basement too." "Excellent. Then this will be our room," she declared. Excuse me, but what's with these curtains? Dreadful taste. I'll choose new ones for you, so hand over the money," she continued. "The garden is quite spacious. Perhaps I'll start a vegetable garden." What were these people going on about? Confused, I turned to Max. "Max, what is?" "Be grateful, Cassie," Max interjected. I was about to confront them when my former mother-in-law cut in with irritation. I looked at her smug expression. "It's not much of a house, but as a gift for the parents, it's decent. If it's a two-family home, we'll move in. Of course, as the wife, you'll do the housework. We'll be generous and only ask for $1,000 a month for our allowance." What? What on earth is she saying? Are they from another planet? I couldn't comprehend and just tilted my head. As the wife, I'm single now, you know. I added, surprising both my former mother-in-law and myself. Max, you didn't tell them? I questioned. I don't accept it, Max shouted. But it didn't matter whether he accepted it or not. The divorce was final. We were complete strangers now. Upon hearing my declaration, my former mother-in-law's face paled. What do you mean you're abandoning us? Your parents. My parents live in the countryside. I was planning to invite them over soon, she protested. Don't joke around. This house is ours, she insisted. No, it's mine, I retorted. What was she thinking? This house was purchased with my savings in my name. Then where are we supposed to live? She demanded. I don't know. That's not my problem, I replied, feeling the weight of their expectations. Apparently, they had already sold their house, and the contract was finalized. They planned to live a comfortable life in this house with the money from the sale and whatever they could extort from me. It was a frightening plan. I don't accept this. My former mother-in-law continued to protest. But it doesn't matter. We're strangers now, and this house is mine. I won't accept it, absolutely not, I asserted firmly. In her anger, my former mother-in-law ripped the curtains. Hey, what are you doing? These things I don't need, such bad taste. This is my house. I'll dim as I please, I snapped back. That's right. What's yours is mine. Everything you own is mine, she insisted. Listen, I don't accept this divorce, and both my parents and I are going to live here, Max shouted out. Oh no, this is getting out of hand, I thought, just as I heard sirens. I had secretly called the police when Max and my former mother-in-law barged into the house. Finally, the police arrived. What are you doing? We haven't done anything wrong, they protested. That's right. If anyone should be taken, it's this woman, my former mother-in-law added. After a scene, they weren't arrested but were escorted away by the police. It had been a tumultuous day. After being released, Max continued to come by, insisting on reconciliation and getting picked up by the police each time. He even followed me to work. So after consulting with my boss, George, he received the stern warning. Misusing his wife's savings and assaulting her new home became the talk of the office, leading to an uncomfortable working environment for Max. His resignation seemed to affect him mentally, and he struggled to find new employment. My former in-laws, having sold their house, moved into the cheap apartment where Max and I had lived. It was an old, poorly maintained place, so it wouldn't have fetched much money. With the money from the sale, it seems like the three of them will be able to live modestly. Finally free from all the drama, I'm relishing the comfort of my own home. Although I offered to have my parents from the countryside move in with me, they're not quite ready to make the move yet. So, for the time being, I'm enjoying the solitude of living alone. Perhaps I'll consider remarrying if the right person comes along. But for now, I'm content. One of the first things on my agenda is to get a dog, something I couldn't do while living in the apartment. I also have plans to try my hand at gardening and to host home parties with friends. As I gaze out the window at the blue sky, I think about all the things I couldn't do before and how I want to embrace and enjoy life from now on.
My name is Emily, age 44, and I'm employed as a TV broadcaster. Alongside me is my husband, Tom, also 44, who manages a photography studio. Our journey began in high school, where we became each other's first and only significant other. The path to marriage was natural, as if destiny had woven our lives together seamlessly. At 25, tragedy struck when I lost my parents in an accident. In the aftermath, Tom's unwavering support was a lifeline, solidifying his place as not just a husband but a familial anchor. Post-nuptials, Tom relocated to my childhood home, a sanctuary left behind by my parents, where I found solace in our shared space. Our union bore fruit with the arrival of our son, bringing immense joy into our lives. Tom proved to be the epitome of an egalitarian partner, seamlessly balancing household responsibilities and childcare, a testament to his commitment to our shared goals. Yet, amidst our bliss, a shadow loomed in the form of my mother-in-law, Jen. She couldn't reconcile with the sight of Tom, a man, taking charge of domestic duties. Reflecting on an incident a decade past, when our son was just beginning elementary school, Jen's presence escalated. With the transition from nursery to elementary school came logistical challenges, prompting us to rely on her assistance in ferrying our son home. Her frequent visits coincided with her husband Steve's retirement, affording them both ample free time. Jen, a staunch traditionalist, had embraced the role of homemaker while Steve was less inclined towards household chores. Whenever Tom found himself in the kitchen, effortlessly whipping up meals, Jen's disapproval lingered audibly in muttered phrases like, "A man's place isn't in the kitchen," or nostalgic remarks about how their generation wouldn't conceive of such occurrences. Upon my initial visit to their home, Jen wasted no time in expressing her expectation for me to relinquish my career aspirations, firmly rooted in her belief that women should prioritize homemaking. My role as a glamorous broadcaster seemed to irk her, contrasting sharply with her worldview. Yet Tom, who had witnessed my passion for broadcasting since our high school days, remained steadfast in his support for my ambitions. Likewise, I championed his pursuit of photography, and our symbiotic collaboration felt organic and effortless. Navigating the challenges of nursery school proved to be a joint effort, but the transition to elementary school brought unexpected hurdles, particularly with after-school care proving less accommodating. This compelled us to lean on Jen's assistance more heavily. As she began to frequent our home, her critiques of household tasks became a common refrain. Despite Tom's nonchalant responses defending our division of labor, Jen persisted in voicing her disapproval, often behind my back. Yet, recognizing her invaluable help, I chose to endure her comments in silence, opting not to engage in confrontation. Despite her traditional values, Jen had a surprising affinity for modern conveniences. Proudly brandishing her smartphone, she boasted of being the sole owner among her peers, reveling in the ease of access it provided. "I'm ahead of the curve," she proclaimed, enthusiastically exploring the internet for various purposes. "Look at how simple it is to do things now," she remarked, advocating for the adoption of convenient tools. Embracing the digital age, she efficiently utilized online platforms for tasks like restaurant reservations and service bookings. However, Jen's embrace of modernity seemed selective when it came to our family's shopping habits. Disapproving of our reliance on a delivery service for weekly grocery orders, she voiced her dissent with comments like, "You should handle the shopping yourself," and lamented the perceived wastefulness of delivery fees. Yet, her tune changed upon discovering the option to order groceries online. Encouraging me to embrace this newfound convenience, she eagerly advocated for the abandonment of outdated paper forms, highlighting the benefits of digital shopping. During evenings when Jen lingered at our home while Tom and I prepared dinner, she often cited the need to return for Steve's meal, emphasizing his inability to dine alone. Steve's aversion to household tasks was evident, leaving Jen to shoulder the domestic burden. Curious about Tom's contrasting approach, I once questioned him about his cooperative attitude towards chores, given his upbringing. Tom's response shed light on his determination to avoid the same complaints his mother had voiced about his father's lack of involvement. It was a lesson learned through observation of negative patterns. Jen's frustration with her husband's reluctance to contribute to household chores was palpable, contrasting with her bemusement at her son's willingness to pitch in. Perplexed by her seemingly contradictory stance, I suspected that Jen found solace in airing grievances, prompting me to maintain a cautious distance. Little did I know at the time, Jen's mounting frustrations would eventually lead her to take drastic actions, such as selling our house without consent, revealing the depths of her desperation. That summer brought an exciting opportunity when my company extended an invitation for a 2-month business trip abroad to cover a sports broadcast at the World Championship. It was a rare chance that felt like the culmination of my hard work and dedication. Recognizing the significance of this opportunity, I turned to Tom for guidance. Amidst his own commitments, he expressed uncertainty about managing both work and caring for our son John. It was then that Jen, who had been quietly listening, stepped in with an offer to assist. Despite lingering reservations from past encounters, the absence of alternative options left me with little choice but to entrust John's care to Jen. While considering the option of having Tom and John stay with Tom's parents, we realized the logistical challenges of commuting to school from their location. Ultimately, we settled on the arrangement of Jen staying at our home during weekdays to provide care for John. With this plan in motion, I embarked on my business trip, fully immersing myself in the sportscasting work and achieving significant strides in my career. Exhausted and relieved to be back in the U.S., I trudged towards my home on a weekday afternoon, burdened by the weight of my suitcase. As I approached the entrance, I was met by Jen, who seemed oddly eager. Prepared to express my gratitude for her assistance during my absence, I was blindsided by her unexpected declaration. This house sold for $300,000, so I'm taking the full amount. Stunned, I struggled to process her words. Our house? I questioned incredulously, hoping for some clarification. With a gleam in her eyes, Jen affirmed, yes, this house. Well, actually, we don't technically own it. Her sudden backtrack only added to my confusion, prompting me to question the authenticity of her claim. However, Jen dismissed my doubts with laughter, insisting on the validity of her statement and brandishing the registration certificate as evidence. As she stood there, arms crossed and seemingly victorious, I realized that reasoning with her would be futile. Deciding to change tactics, I attempted to redirect the conversation. Let's set that aside for a moment. Why are you selling it? I inquired, hoping for some semblance of explanation. With a nonchalant air, Jen declared, what belongs to the wife belongs to the husband, and therefore to me. I'm using it to build a new house. Her rationale, though flawed, hinted at a deeper agenda, leaving me grappling with a sense of disbelief and betrayal. As Jen's words echoed in the air, her bloodshot eyes filled me with a creeping sense of unease. The notion of a new house, one that belonged to both my husband and me, suddenly seemed tainted with a sinister undertone. Her resolve was palpable as she outlined her intentions, driven by a misguided sense of obligation to shield Tom from household chores. I've raised him not to engage in such tasks, and I won't allow him to do so in the future, she declared with unwavering conviction. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, it became clear that Jen's perception of Tom's role in our household had been distorted from the beginning. A simple act of solidarity, when Tom had insisted on sharing household responsibilities shortly after our marriage, had been misconstrued by Jen. In her eyes, Tom's willingness to contribute was a mere reflection of his residence in my house, rather than a genuine commitment to shared responsibilities. The concept of a working couple collaborating on household duties simply did not register in her worldview. Delving deeper into the situation, I discovered the underlying financial strain plaguing Jen and Steve following Steve's retirement. With his pension falling short, expectations and job opportunities scarce, they found themselves grappling with the daunting prospect of maintaining their rented apartment. It was this sense of desperation that drove them to resort to such unthinkable measures. No, this house isn't mine, and Tom thinks it's normal to do housework, I asserted, attempting to counter Jen's accusations. Yet, before I could elaborate further, Jen dismissed my words as lies, adamantly refusing to entertain any alternative interpretation. Desperate for clarity amidst the chaos, I redirected the conversation towards practical details. Where did you sell it? I inquired, hoping to gain insight into the situation. Jen confirmed my suspicions, revealing that she had engaged an online evaluation real estate agent, AA Real Estate, to facilitate the sale. With minimal effort, the necessary documents were submitted, and the transaction proceeded seamlessly. It's a convenient world, isn't it? She remarked with a hint of satisfaction. As the details emerged, it became apparent that Jen had acted impulsively, swayed by the assurances of the real estate agent. The allure of a lucrative offer, coupled with the buyer's eagerness for a property in our area, had seemingly convinced her of the transaction's merits, selling a 20-year-old house for $300,000. I found a good real estate, didn't I? She boasted proudly, oblivious to the turmoil her actions had caused. As I delved into my investigation, I came across a website for the real estate company that appeared legitimate. Attempting to confirm the validity of the sale, I dialed their number, only to be met with silence on the other end. Seeking clarification from Jen regarding her involvement, I demanded to know if she had physically visited the real estate company's address. Her response was dismissive, claiming that such visits were unnecessary in today's digital age. Determined to uncover the truth, I issued a firm ultimatum: visit the address in person the following day, or our discussion would cease. To my astonishment, Jen's tearful call the next day confirmed my worst fears. The purported real estate company was nowhere to be found. In its place stood a derelict wooden structure devoid of life. Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but burst into laughter at Jen's folly. Upon her return, Jen confessed to her misguided actions. Fueled by a misplaced sense of opportunity upon discovering the house registration certificate in my name during my absence, she had enlisted the services of the real estate agent. Their shameless assurances, coupled with Jen's naivety, led her to believe that the sale was legitimate, even without actual ownership. In her eagerness to seize what she perceived as an opportunity, she had unwittingly fallen prey to deception, providing the agent with all the requested documents without hesitation. Upon discovering a potential buyer, the fraudulent real estate agents demanded a deposit, half of their commission fee, amounting to $4,800, equivalent to half of the $9,600 commission promised for the $300,000 sale. Concerned of the gravity of the situation, I promptly contacted the authorities to report the scam. 2 officers were dispatched to our home to investigate the matter further. To our dismay, the police officers revealed that such internet fraud, masquerading as legitimate real estate agents, had become increasingly prevalent. Their modus operandi involved offering free property valuations, soliciting official documents from unsuspecting victims, introducing a fictitious buyer, and then absconding with a hefty fee. It was a cunning scheme that preyed on the vulnerabilities of individuals seeking to sell their properties. With the proliferation of vacant houses and the ease of fabricating addresses for document delivery, such fraudulent activities had surged in recent times. The officers theorized that the fraudsters likely designated a postbox under a fictitious name to receive the documents. Trembling with apprehension, Jen cooperated with the police, providing them with vital information. However, their inquiry took a startling turn when the officer questioned Jen about the house deed. In a barely audible voice, she admitted, "No, it was the original." The revelation left the officer visibly astounded, underscoring the severity of the situation and the extent of Jen's unwitting participation in the scam. As the police officer turned to me for clarification, I calmly denied any involvement in requesting the deposit. "No, I didn't ask for that," I stated plainly. Despite Jen's visibly distressed state, the officer seemed to lean towards trusting my account over hers. "She says she didn't ask for it. Selling things on your own isn't advisable, madame." "This situation is outrageous," he admonished, casting a disapproving glance at Jen, who remained silent, her lip bitten in remorse. Turning his attention back to Jen, the officer probed further about the deed registration. "You sent a copy, right?" Her barely audible response, "No, it was the original," left the officer even more incredulous. His dismay evident, he exchanged a glance with me, silently acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Sensing the need for resolution, the officer inquired about filing a theft report. However, I declined, explaining that the document had no validity in the sale process. "Actually, this house has already been sold to someone else," I revealed, elaborating on the legal changes that rendered the deed registration obsolete in such transactions. While I cherished the deed as a memento of my parents' legacy, its practical significance had diminished over time. With this revelation, the reality of the situation began to sink in, leaving Jen with a heavy sense of regret. As the reality of the situation began to dawn on Jen, she realized her misunderstanding regarding the deed and its implications. In her mind, the presence of the deed signified ongoing ownership of the house. Unaware that its significance had diminished in the sale process orchestrated by the fraudsters, faced with embarrassment and frustration, she turned her gaze towards me with a hint of resentment, questioning why I hadn't sold the house myself. Her muttered words stung, insinuating that my career choices had led to our current predicament. Meeting her gaze with a calm resolve, I explained the true reason behind the sale: Tom's ambition to pursue his dream photography business. With insufficient funds to kickstart his venture, we had made the difficult decision to part with our cherished family home, selling it to an acquaintance and subsequently renting it back. As I recounted the series of events, Jen's demeanor shifted, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Her tearful outburst laid bare the deeper frustrations plaguing her own life, revealing the stark contrast between her own marital struggles and our united front. As she lamented her husband's perceived shortcomings, her grievances poured forth unabated, leaving the police officer at a loss for words as he struggled to navigate the emotional turmoil unfolding before him. Despite filing a fraud report, the perpetrators remained elusive, evading capture for over a decade, leaving little hope for the recovery of the lost funds. In the wake of the ordeal, Steve's trust in Jen waned, prompting him to assume full control over their finances. Stripped of any financial autonomy, Jen found herself relegated to seeking Steve's approval for even the most basic expenses, a restriction she found suffocating and frustrating. As she grappled with the consequences of her actions, Jen turned to Tom for solace, only to be met with a reminder of her own culpability. Bereft of disposable income, she sought employment through senior job listings, eventually finding fulfillment in teaching the elderly how to navigate modern technology. Despite her own struggles, Jen's empathetic approach endeared her to her students, earning her respect for her ability to relate to their challenges and patiently guide them through the intricacies of smartphone usage. Though her circumstances had shifted dramatically, Jen found solace in her newfound role, finding purpose in helping others navigate the digital age. Steve, driven perhaps by his pride, found senior roles unfulfilling and promptly resigned, leaving him without a source of income. Meanwhile, Jen's schedule has become increasingly hectic, often leaving him to tend to household chores as she attends to her commitments. Surprisingly, Steve has discovered a newfound passion for cooking and is honing his skills in the kitchen. The dynamics in Tom's parents' household have shifted dramatically, yet both individuals seem to have found a sense of satisfaction in their new roles. In my own journey, following a successful overseas business trip, I've ascended the career ladder and now serve as the anchor for the evening news. Tom's photography studio is thriving, and together, we've accumulated enough savings to contemplate repurchasing and renovating the family home. We remain grateful to our acquaintance who allowed us to retain ownership of the house despite the distressing ordeal we endured. Ultimately, the situation proved beneficial for Tom's parents. As our son nears adulthood at 17, I've imparted this tale to him as a lesson on the dangers of internet fraud. However, out of respect for his grandparents, I've chosen to keep the aspect of their attempt to sell our house a secret, preserving their dignity.